I mean, if there hadn't been a VANA, I'd have started one myself. There's a bit of pride in being in VANA. Pride in the kind of people who get together and how they're getting together and what they're doing.
You would like it to be remembered after all the members are gone?
I'd like it to be remembered as an organization of people who have fought in the war, who know what war is like, who are particularly well qualified to oppose nuclear and atomic weapons. As such, we have a certain authority which few others have. Although I can't claim this authority for myself, I was never a hero.
Everybody knew about the dropping of the atomic bomb at Hiroshima. To me, I was really upset in seeing that such a senseless slaughtering civilians by United States wasn't necessary. Dropping the atomic bomb, killing hundreds of thousands of people. And even today, it's toned down, any criticism of it. Why? To save a few thousand combat troops' lives, to shorten the war? Is this worth it? This makes me very much afraid as a VANA member what can happen in the future. As American being the policeman of the world, and the increased militarism. That's why I belong to VANA. Gifford, especially in the Bomber Command, who had realized after bombing a defenseless city like in eastern Germany, Dresden, firebombed it, and how he got committed to VANA, and I had to join it too, because that certainly is my belief, that we have to fight war, and of course then the Hiroshima and Nagasaki atomic bombs had been dropped by the Americans.
I bombed many cities. The other ones, we were told they were important for the war. But with Dresden, we knew that it was full of refugees and that it had not been heavily bombed before, so we thought it couldn't be important for the war. But we obeyed our orders, you know. But then a few days later, we were bombing another city. So we didn't think about it very much after that, until just 4 or 5 years ago with the atomic bomb. Then we thought we have to understand what happened before. So then I studied what happened to Dresden, and we started this Veterans Organization for Peace.
He was a very gentle person, quiet. I believe he had been a United Church minister at one time. And he felt a terrible burden, I think, over his taking part in the bombing of Dresden that created that firestorm. He still had guilt feelings, I think, about that. And he took a trip back there to Germany, to Dresden. And that's what that video's about, that Joyce was talking about. Meeting the people there and telling them that he was one of the crew that took part in that raid that night. And hoping that they will forgive and try to make a fresh start, I guess, or something.
I can see him there, sitting there, see his image, and I thinking what a great idea this was, and I wanted to be part of that. Gifford came, that organizing meeting was held at our church, Newton Brook United Church. Gifford spoke to the group, and that was the beginning of it. He was a very inspirational speaker. And he had, seems to me he had pictures or something of the bombing of Cologne, maybe?
Dresden?
Dresden. Yeah, it was Dresden, that's right. And he had been part of that. And that turned him off of violence. Well, we're on the same wavelength as far as resolution of conflict was concerned. There just had to be a better way of doing it, and that meant negotiations instead of military solutions. No, I don't remember very much of what he said. I remember him being there, and remembering us all being very much glued to his message and very much in attune to what his intentions were, to get something started which would try to enlighten people as to the uselessness and the danger of atomic warfare.
I think most people with who've been there, who've been through wars and everything, realize that this is no way to go on. And I don't know who started VANA. Do you remember? Was it Giff?
Yeah, Gifford.
Yeah.
In a group in Halifax.
Yeah, I remember the Giff turned up in Toronto. I think he came to that church up here in Newton Brook. That's where I met him.
And there was a founding meeting of some sort in
Yeah.
the 80s?
Yeah.
Roughly 1985?
I don't remember that, but I remember distinctly meeting Gifford. And I was very impressed, and I said, well, this is for us. And that was it.
Can you describe what kind of person he was?
Gifford? A very charming man, yeah.
And what was so convincing about him?
Oh, I don't think we needed convincing. Anybody who turned up realized we've all been there. And we don't want any more of it, that's all.
One of the things that impacted me was seeing photographs of Hiroshima or Hiroshima, the devastation there and what it did to the civilians. And I think it seemed very natural to associate with a group like VANA, Veterans Against Nuclear Arms, because I don't think they published enough of the pictures of what happened at Hiroshima and Nagasaki. I can remember, I can't remember which paper it was, but one paper had quite a spread on the front page of photographs, you know, of the devastation to people and to property. VANA just seemed a natural group to affiliate with, because when you read about the devastation from nuclear war, or well, the bombs, and the possibility of nuclear war, you certainly want to, I think, be against it.
I was not a founder, but as soon as I heard of it, I joined, because I'm a veteran, and I was already active against nuclear arms. It was a natural thing to do and a good thing to do. Well, my concerns grow. They're still growing. The nuclear weapons need to be abolished. And the U.S. continues to stockpile them, despite provisions in the treaties which they signed for the reduction. There was some reduction, but not the elimination which is foreseen. And also, they're now developing nuclear weapons of type that were not foreseen when the original treaties were signed, but whose spirit should certainly be covered by those, the so-called bunker busters, and so on. I'm concerned also of the danger of accident. If you have something hanging around for a long, long time, something's bound to go wrong. At 3 Mile Island in the U.S., they were very close to a catastrophe. In Chernobyl in Ukraine, there was such a catastrophe. A U.S. bomber accidentally dropped some nuclear bombs off the coast of Spain a few years ago. Except for Chernobyl, the world has been lucky. But you cannot depend upon luck. So that has been a concern of mine, beginning early on.
The peace movement spent an awful lot of time in Canada fighting not to get missile defense. Missile defense is the missing piece that would make it easy to use nuclear weapons, because it would make it possible for the U.S. to achieve the nuclear hegemony that it wants. There are people who still believe that when the Cold War ended, that was the end of our troubles, and who would be shocked to know that nuclear alert still carries on, hair trigger alert, 2,000 missiles on either side, Russia and the United States, in the name of reason. Why? Well, it has nothing to do with reason. It has to do with the momentum of the search for absolute power. And that's one of the things that was very much stressed in Hiroshima and Nagasaki, the need to draw all movements together to understand that it is changing our world that's an issue. And we won't succeed in the fair trade and justice movement if we have not addressed the nuclear issue and the issue of the easy resort to war and the military spending that simply encourages it, because it's quite clear weapons manufacturers help promote war.
My husband and I traveled to Japan at one point and went to Hiroshima, and it was just devastating. The nuclear bomb there, and it really brought home to me how awful it was, and to think that it was being considered as a possible weapon after they knew how devastating the effects were. That when I heard about VANA, I thought, well, isn't that great? There's some organization that is against nuclear arms, and what's more, it's a veterans organization, so that they will be seen as having more authenticity because the people in it are veterans. It's important that people speak up against nuclear arms. I mean, it's, we can gain so much more by helping people so that they have enough food and housing and the good things in life. War costs an awful lot more than peace does, and yet people are willing to put money into war and not into peace. It just doesn't make economic sense at all.
Close we are to annihilation under the most suffering and annihilation. The radiation, when you think that, you can hardly bear it. 30,000 nuclear weapons, each one of which is at least 100 times more powerful than Hiroshima. And they're available, ready to be used. It's just frightening. Just frightening. 6th, I was certainly in Halifax, and we knew instantly that these bombs had been dropped over Hiroshima and Nagasaki. I was bewildered, but that was the extent of my feeling at the time. Well, now the war is over, we'll start being demobilized. That's what this is the end of the war. That people were evaporated, the slow radiation, the painful death that people rushed into the river, which of course by then was poisoned and died there. The long, lingering, painful deaths. It's only later that I realized that.
I remember recently being asked when I was talking about this with a group of scouts and guides. One of the young girls asked, "Did you feel sorry for the people below when you were dropping bombs?" And I had to say that at that time we didn't feel sorry. They were the enemy, and as we were enemy to them, it was a war. And we didn't feel sorry at that time. I didn't see the question about what did we see on the ground. As a navigator, I had to work at a table, and I had to have a light to see what I was doing. So I was surrounded by a blackout curtain. So I was isolated from seeing anything. But we were operating the night of D-Day. We didn't know it was D-Day. We knew something extra was up, but we didn't know it was D-Day until we were coming back. And the pilot called me up to have a look. And as we were crossing the English Channel, it was just jam-packed with ships of all sizes. Just a horrendous sight of the channel being filled. And we knew then that that was D-Day. And we had been operating to help prepare the way.
December the 5th, 1940, I became a WAF, which was the Women's Auxiliary Air Force. We were very much part of the Royal Air Force. And I was assigned as a cook. And the work was very hard, long hours, and we didn't have too much in the way of food. But I was assigned to Bomber Command in the east part of England, and so I was right in the middle of it. When the war in Europe was over, some of the WAFs, or even ground crew, were allowed to go up in a Lancaster bomber to go over to what we were told, to see the devastation you helped to do. That didn't hit me until many years afterwards, and I did get up into a Lancaster, and I sat with the pilot. We flew over as far as Cologne. We weren't allowed to land, but I saw some of the devastation. And you'll see it in the book that I have called Lancaster.
And what did you see? What did you see on the plane?
It was flattened cities. Just nothing but rubble. I can't tell you exactly what cities we saw, but at one point we were told that down there is Krupp's armament factory. It turns your guts over when you see things like that, to think that man would do that to one another. VANA is a very unique movement where all kinds of people that have seen war and are trying to tell the world no. No more nuclear arms.
Would be, I guess, pretty close to, what, 81 maybe? Around 81 when I joined VANA. And it was mainly because of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. That just shattered me. It took every bit of confidence away from everybody as far as I was concerned. I couldn't understand understand the devastation, how anybody could conceive of doing such a thing. As if it was it's no, we can make we can make one. Yeah, we've already made one, so let's make another one, and make it bigger, and more deadly. You can't conceive of people that want to do that amount of destruction, and I just couldn't. Hiroshima and Nagasaki just were that shook everything I ever believed in.
Oh yes, VANA in its younger days when they're more younger members, say a decade ago and so forth, VANA was in the front line of demonstrations down on Phillip Square and whatever, and marches along University Avenue, on demonstrations in front of the American Embassy and this kind of thing. Oh yes, there's very much of that.
That's my mother with myself and my brother Donald. I think sometimes people say that the people that fought the war came back. They're damaged, definitely, but the people that stayed home, whether it's the children or typically the women waiting and hearing that news or getting that letter, or and the grandparents and the parents, tremendous damage, and it's made me more sensitive of that for sure.
Personally, what I feel and I think of the comrades I had lost, and their memories are with me. When you're with your comrades, and one instant and they're gone the next instant, you think about them, and you think also that again, that why was I spared? I'm spared, and lucky that I was, and I wouldn't want to see that repeated, be it the military or the civilian. And of course, I believe there are more civilians killed during the war than the military. So observing that, yes, fine. We're observing the fallen soldiers. But what about all those that you've seen while you're in Europe? The refugees. They're trying to escape this. They're moving from one place to the other. They're also being killed, and we have to recognize that too.
I think there's hope. The thing is, we're a dying breed, and how can that carry on without the veterans? It'll have to be the young people, the keen young people, who'll have to take on that, and what form it takes, I just don't understand.
The message is don't give up, and also don't take it for granted that the world is going to be a better place. It's not a better place, and it's you're liable to get caught. And you're going to have to think about a lot of things before you get to the end, because it's very disappointing when you realize that so many people in this world right now have very little respect for life. It just isn't. It isn't a big factor at all. It's cheap, and it can be just kind of tossed aside.
But I do think that we have to keep on going until there's only one veteran left, to keep on talking about it. I think we should tell the young people what nuclear bombs are like. It's far worse than Hiroshima and Nagasaki.
That's why we have to keep going to the last gasp and try to throw the torch to younger ones, and insofar as we are able, provide a vision and hope that it's worthwhile trying to lower the tension so we won't have another war.